And then I would just like to acknowledge for those of us in North America and the land down under at least, that we are on the traditional and unceded territories of many First Nations, Métis, Inuit people that call this land home. And we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to move forward in partnership with our Indigenous brothers and sisters in the spirit of reconciliation based on the principles of mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. So thank you for that. And I'm going to just introduce Darlene Jamieson, our region's friendship chair, for a moment, because she has a little surprise for us. So Darlene.
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome. And this is our first anniversary of our sharing Sir Optimus stories. And in fact, it was on January 29th, 2022 that we met Kate Moore from the chat line and our Hillary as well. And I just a minute. I was going to bring a birthday candle. We had our girls' conference, so we have a little balloon here, and I have a cake, and I promise I won't eat it. There's actually a 40 as well. The 40 is for SI Bayside, and Bayside is near Brisbane. And when my husband and I did a cruise of the South Pacific, we stopped and met Sir Optimus both in Brisbane and in Sydney. So when you travel, make sure you visit. And we didn't get COVID, they didn't have it then. But I wanted to welcome everyone, and I'm sorry. It's also 1 year that SI Edmonton also invited their friendship link from Ukraine. Little did we know that there would be a war, and it's going to be 1 year, as we know, in February. And I was just on a call with SI Europe, and it was amazing to hear the stories of how Sir Optimus around the world and friends are helping the Ukrainians, both in Ukraine and those refugees near Europe and around the world. And I'm sure you can't tell from my last name, but Jamieson is a good Ukrainian name. My parents were Canadian Ukrainians from Alberta, and anyway, I'm so pleased that we're here. This is our 5th sharing Sir Optimus stories, and we have amazing women and stories. And I have cake here, but I'm not going to eat it just yet. And I wanted to introduce Sue Riney, who's had many positions with SIA. I think we all have stories from our past, our present, and our future. And I think maybe, Sue, if you could just take it away and introduce our amazing presidents from past, present, and future. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Darlene, for planting the seed of the idea for this call today. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And thank you, Suzanne in Western Canada, for serving as the host. I think Sharon wins the prize because she guessed there'd be 55. We're at 52 people. Good guess in there, Sharon. Since this is a call about Sir Optimus friendships, I am thrilled that I can call each of these ladies my friend. We hope to have some time for some question and answer period at the end of the panel. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. And Darlene and Suzanne, if you can watch there for what gets thrown in and be ready at the end to share those. I've known past SI President Sharon for at least 19 or 20 years. And my first memory of her was when I was district director in Northwestern Region, and she attended my district meeting that was at a resort in Washington State near the Canadian border. And at that time, she was governor of Western Canada region. Now, it's just a short drive across the border for her to be able to be there. But I do remember being so impressed that she'd made the effort to join us. And I asked her to carry the Canadian flag at our opening ceremonies. And I think we probably even sang "O Canada" in her honor. And this was just the first of what has been 2 decades worth of instances where I have witnessed Sharon be there, not only for me, but for so many others, helping them move forward in their Soroptimist journey. And I thank you, Sharon, for joining us on this panel. I've known SIA President Stephanie for 37 years. We live just a mile from each other in Oak Harbor, Washington, and I've seen this gal through everything from kids' birthday parties to pregnancy tests, from a divorce to a wedding, and everything in between. And we've traveled together, we've worked together, and we've supported each other through each other's breast cancer treatments. So you can bet there are a lot of stories about her I could share, and many she'd probably pay me not to share. But thank you, Stephanie, for being with us today. And then I took a trip through SIA President-elect Bobby's photos on Facebook this week to see if I could figure out when I first met her. I remember seeing her in many places, and it's funny because when you go through people's pictures, at least Soroptimists, I saw her in photos in many of the same locations at the same Soroptimist meetings where I had photos of myself. That's probably the same with a lot of you. So I'm sure we've probably crossed paths for at least 13 to 15 years. That could be longer. But the first photo that I could find of myself with Bobby is from 2015 at the SI convention in Istanbul. One of my fondest memories from that convention was meeting with Bobby and other Soroptimists from around the world, just like on this call, in the hospitality lounge in the Hilton at the end of each day for happy hour, where they served complimentary wine, and we made dinner out of the appetizers they served. Strangers became fast friends, and we shared stories, and we laughed and we laughed and we laughed. And it's great to have you here too, Bobby. So are the three of you ready to spill the tea, so to speak? Let's just pretend it's just the three of us, and not, we're at 53 now, and not 53 listening in, and let's get to know each other a little better than we do already. And I'll get you started with a question, and it's a two-parter. So when did you first become a Soroptimist, and why? And then what inspired you to take the step forward into leadership at the Federation and or international level of Soroptimist? And Sharon, we're going to start with you.
Okay, well, why did I join? Well, I was living a simple life as a kid in a rural area, and team sports and social gatherings happened, and then you have babies, and then what's next? And you can't be doing sports while you're pregnant. And I was single by then, and there was an ad in the paper that said, business and professional women who want to work and play together, call this number. So I did, and they were starting a Soroptimist club in my community. And I really felt the need to develop friendships with like-minded women. And they certainly weren't my next door neighbors, although they were lovely people. We didn't have a lot in common. So it's been, many of those gals are still my close friends today. So that's how I joined. And that was almost 37 years ago. So I was what we consider in these days a youngster at 33 years old. Do the math. And what was the next question?
What inspired you to move forward in the Soroptimist ladder?
Several things. Somebody would ask if you would do something. It's always important to ask, because you're not going to get a yes if you don't ask the question, and you might get a maybe and you might get a yes. So I took advantage of opportunities, and many times it needed to align with what was going on in my personal life. I worked in a male-dominated world in business, and quite aggressive. And I was trying to challenge myself to see what it would be like to work with women. I wasn't sure I could. And that was personal gain, but it was always aligning myself. I think federation wise, what happened is I was going through a divorce, and it was quite palace intrigue, as somebody used to say, but there was a lot of drama in this 7-year court case. And I hated repeating the story to everybody. I was living it. And when I was Federation board member and president, I was traveling around the world, and I'd leave on these trips feeling a bit sorry for myself, like, oh boy, you really got it rough. You're going through this. And I'd see these women and these projects that were so much worse off than me. And I'd go home and think, give yourself a kick. You have nothing to complain about. You're privileged in comparison to most people in the world. Get over it and get through it. And I think that came to a big climax for me in Sierra Leone in 2009, and traveling. And it was the first time in my life I've seen, what they call abject poverty, and realizing how fortunate we are to live where we live. And to me, that continued my pathway in leadership, because I felt like my business skills could apply to my work in Soroptimist. Everybody's got a little bit of a talent somewhere. You just have to find out what it is and where it fits. So that's the story for me.
How about you, Stephanie?
Well, I had to jot down some notes only because I know we have a short amount of time, and Sue knows me, I could take this much to share a story. And yes, it has been 37 years. So just as she could spill the tea on me, I could spill the tea on her. So we're both fabulous people, and we'll just leave it at that. So my start with the Soroptimist organization started in 1986 when I joined Venture Clubs, and here in Oak Harbor. So I was a charter member of Oak Harbor's Venture Club. And for our members who don't know who that is, what that is across the world, Venture was a sponsored organization of Soroptimist International of the Americas. And it was intended for women in the community, young women who weren't eligible to be a Soroptimist. So this was back in the day when we had eligibility requirements. Thank God, because I probably never would have been able to have joined our Soroptimist club, at that early age. So it started there, and then I joined our Soroptimist club in 1994, right after the birth of my youngest son, which, as Sue will say, she was there for the pregnancy test. Which is Sue and I could do a whole webinar on just the fun, inappropriate Soroptimist stories that you come across. So the why I joined, it goes back to Venture, is because I was asked, and it was almost a voluntold type of situation from my sister-in-law, who was a Soroptimist. And it was a way for me I was new to the community here in Oak Harbor. And it was similar to Sharon, what you were saying. It was a way to connect with like-minded women. And I wanted to make my own group of friends, because this is where my first husband, I'm only on 2, but my first husband, this is where, he grew up. So this was his circle, his people. And I wanted a way to make friends. But I think the critical piece isn't so much why I joined, but it's why I stayed a member all these years. And it's, first and foremost, the amazing service that we do and have the privilege to do within our local and global communities. But it's the, excuse me, it's the friendships. It's the connections that you make. It's the 37-year friendship with Sue Riney and many others. As Sue was sharing how she met Sharon, I remember at that district meeting going, oh my gosh, we have, oh, do we bow? Do we, you come from that, and Sharon made it so easy, so friendly, so approachable. So, everything from that perspective. I think the follow on to that is why continue to serve and grow. Similar to what Sharon said, because you're asked. People see in you something that you perhaps don't see in yourself. I got involved at the federation level. I was a region governor as well with Pam Parker, and Pam happens to be a thumbnail that's right up here. I can see her. Pam and I were governors together. And my post-governorship, I was asked by Aisha Brown at headquarters if I would be willing to help facilitate Governor's Roundtable for the incoming governors. So I'm a huge proponent of paying it forward, because Soroptimist has mentored me and made me who I am today, whether you like it or not. It's all, Soroptimist. They helped me professionally, helped me grow as a professional, and so I've always believed in paying it forward and giving back. So that was where I started, and then from there, it's like you should serve on the Federation board when it's your electoral area's time. Why don't you run for director? And then it became Stephanie, why don't you put your name in the hat for president-elect? And it was like, oh, yeah, okay. And then you get the call that says you've won, and you're like, oh, okay. So now I've hit that ceiling of where I now have to perform at a level that people believe I can perform at, so to speak. But it all comes from a place of love and service and knowing that people believe in you. So the power is in the ask, and in people believing that you can do the work. And I choose to serve because I hope and believe that I can make a difference for our fellow Soroptimist members.
Awesome. How about you, Bobby?
Well, I have kind of a similar story. I lived in a town that I had been commuting to work, so I knew nobody in the town except my one longtime friend, Leanne. And it's opened a business, and she said, you should join Soroptimist. That way I'll be able to meet you for lunch every week. And I thought, oh, okay. I had no idea. I knew about it because my grandmother had been a Soroptimist, but well, and as Leanne will tell you, I would go to the meetings, but I never sat with her. I always found new people that I wanted to meet. So she's always been kind of irritated with me because of that. But that's my story of starting. And then how I got into leadership, I don't know. Every time I went to conference and had to do a little speech because I was always running for something. I remember the nominating committee was the first one I ran for. I always said, hi, my name is Bobby and I'm a Soroptaholic. And it's like, I just feel like it's just something I'm addicted to. And once I do one thing, then that leads to another. And I have made so many friends all through the years, and being on the region board was an amazing, 9 years of your life. And we spent half of those hours that we had meetings in a car driving from one place to another. So my friend Pam is laughing because we had the best ideas that we came up with in Donna Gaddis Wolf's truck. And I just have so many great memories of that time. So, and I think it's similar going higher. It was just like you'd be in a situation and somebody would ask you, well, I guess that's the next step. I just should run for director. And then I remember I had just gotten elected and they send you this thing saying, do you want to be president-elect? And I'm thinking, I don't even know if I can be a director yet. So I had to kind of cool my heels on that. But Kazuko calls me I think it was almost the middle of the night or something. She called me on WhatsApp and said, I want you to be our secretary treasurer. And I'm like, oh, I was trying to say no, Kazuko, but how can you say no to her? She's such a sweetie. So it's people asking, that's how you just get from one level to another. So I think I've always felt myself as a catalyst to help other people be successful. And I think Soroptimist has given me such a great opportunity to do that at so many different levels. And so making friends, being able to travel, and knowing the impact you have on the women that we serve, that's all what's got me where I am today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. And that's just a common theme, and no surprises in what you shared. It's just a reminder to all of us to ask people. People enjoy being asked and brought along, and that you never know where it may end up, and helping support others. So thank you all. So Sharon, Stephanie and Bobby are just in the midst of their SIA leadership terms, whereas you've hopefully had some time to reflect back and see the changes in SIA that have taken place since you were president about 10 years ago. So what impacts are you most proud of that have come about since your time in leadership at SIA?
I think for SIA, as president, I always believe when you take a leadership position, you have to look at the situation, know the organization, learn the organization, and figure out where you can make a difference, what your skills are going to lend themselves to. And there's some things that, like, don't be asking me to sing with Sue. You noticed at the 100th anniversary, Stephanie and I were not given microphones. Because it's not a good sound that might come out. But so you need to know where you can apply yourself. And so going into a position, I think the work is done a year or two ahead, where you're doing a lot of thinking on what you can do to make that difference. And in SIA, one thing I noticed when I was at Governor's Roundtable is we were training people too late. So you became a governor and then you went to Governor's Roundtable. And I was really pushing to say, no, you've got to start way earlier, 2 years earlier. The governor-elect should be getting trained so that they can do their thinking and then go on and then have a good transition between the governor and the governor-elect. So I think those seeds that were planted have come full circle and are working well now. But it really frustrated me to be at Governor's Roundtable and they're trying to tell me what to do. And I planned my term the year before. So that was one thing. Project Match was something that came, and at SIA at the board, you have the flip chart at the board meeting and you put your ideas down, and then staff does a really amazing job at pulling the ideas together, which is far better than having 20 women in the room debating on what word to change. But so Project Match was something I would get sort of frustrated because clubs didn't know what other clubs were doing all the time. So it was a way to for the Global South to get supported by the Global North, et cetera. And that doesn't, it was a partnership with SIE. And so they continue that. And that's where a lot of the Ukraine initiative is happening now. And liveyourdream.org. I always felt we needed a large database of members so that seed got planted and didn't quite go the way I thought it would, but it went. So that was the important thing. And our engagement at the UN and CSW, we would hear, because when you go on leadership at the federation level, you're also going on the board of SI at the same time at the time I was there. And there was this mysterious place in New York that people went to, but I never really heard any outcomes coming back again. So I was working closely at the time with Lori Blair, trying to say, we need some training and a core delegation in order to have people know why they're there. And that evolved, and I ended up staying on as the liaison to SI for several years before I was the assistant director of advocacy in order to keep that initiative going. And, it sort of got out of control because, pretty soon hundreds of people want to go to CSW, but that's success, right? Because, and then it's a matter of them knowing why they're there and being trained and so on. And some of that continues today, although leadership was a little interrupted at the SI level with COVID, of course. But again, when I ran for president of SI, it was all about unifying the membership around the world. Let's know what each other are doing. Let's talk to one another. Let's become friends. Let's not just be something we hear about. And with COVID, interestingly enough, it was a heck of a way to spend COVID, because I would say I'm having a 3-continent day, because I could be on with this time zone, and then I could be in Europe later on, and then Sue knows, then I would be in Australia later on. And sometimes they would look and say, is she there? Is she there? And I dozed off, right? Because it was some weird hour of the morning. But having those webinars and becoming virtual and whatnot, although now it can drive us crazy, was really great for the organization, because we all got to know each other really well. And I think maybe it's evidenced by Dublin. We've got 1,500 people registered for convention, which is really great, So yeah, so those are the things that were important. And I always take a look at the administrative side too, as most people don't like that part, but I always figure you take everything apart. And I took companies public in my career. So you take everything apart, you scrub up the pieces and you put them back together in a way that you might think works. And I think the other big job is to be sure that you are leaving a clean succession behind you, or as clean as possible, because your job really as president is to be sure there's leaders coming behind you. And my trip to India is a perfect example. Ayushi was somebody that she applied for something and I selected her, and we talk all the time, even now. And she says, we talk about our age difference. We say, well, we don't feel an age difference. We feel a difference in experience. And if we can bring those younger members along and give them a space at the table, then you've done your job as a leader. So that's kind of my path. And what's next? Who knows? No, that's not true. I was, Michelle will wonder why I'm not saying that. And Stephanie, I'm chairing the 2027 convention.
Yay. Yeah, well, I want to tag on then to your comment then about bringing people along. And the first item you shared about the governor-elect training, and there's a focus on developing leadership within SI, and many of our clubs struggle with getting people to step forward, and our regions do as well. So Stephanie, I want to ask you a little bit about if you could, because I admire all of you, and I want to grow up to be just like all of you. But Steph, can you share a bit about the plans underway to help ensure the next generation of SOAR Optimist leaders are prepared to lead this organization forward? I skipped forward in our question plan for this.
No, that
tied in.
You bet. And I'm very proud of this work, and I think it's twofold. So to what Sue has said and what Sharon has said, we need to make sure that we are creating a leadership bench. And I come from a sports background, athletic background as well, and you're only as good as your players that you have to pull in, that they may be sitting on the bench for a while, but somebody gets hurt and they've got to come in and play. And so maybe that's been done well at the club level, but to Sharon's point, it really felt like, all of a sudden you were elected to a position and it was assumed that you would know what to do. And I will share that, many of our SOAR Optimist members are leaders in their professions. They managers in companies, own their own companies, whatever level they're at. It's very different to be a leader within a nonprofit organization, because they're not your employees, they're volunteers. And so how you show up as a leader in a volunteer organization is different than perhaps how you show up as a leader in your professional life. There are transferable skills that you need in both, but I can't tell you what to do, and here's the consequences of if you don't do it in the volunteer world, because the volunteer will just go, yeah, I don't want to do this and I'm out. Whereas in a work world, they'll say, hopefully, yes, I understand. I don't want to be written up. Yeah, whatever that looks like. But so one of the things that has been happening over the last several years, but is really coming to a really nice culmination, and it's based on the leadership that we have at SIA under the direction of Executive Director, CEO Michelle Burnett, our Chief of Impact and Engagement, Aisha Brown, and Nicole as well, is they are putting together, and everybody should be seeing this shortly. We've put some teasers out there, but we create leadership training so that the situations that Sharon talked about, people aren't in a leadership role not knowing how to be a leader in a volunteer organization. We're creating the bench. So we're creating a leadership roundtable. So it's stepping back from governor's roundtable, meaning it's open for everybody. Now there will still be separate additional training for governor-elects and governors, but we want to start at the club level because our club leaders need training. And that's not just people who are on the board, but it's when you serve as a chairman of a committee. And so we have that coming up. There's also going to be a leadership fellowship program, which is a 2-year program where you get a certificate at the end that you have participated. And we've been doing, I say the colloquial but it's coming from our amazing staff at SIA, but different webinars that are out for all members at the club level. How to be the treasurer, civility, club operations. So we're, instead of it just being on paper, here's the bullet points, read this. We're trying to bring those to life and create greater training opportunities for our entire membership. And that's at my heart, because that was my professional background, was leadership and professional development. So I think that answers your question, Sue, about how we're moving forward with that. So thank you.
Great. And in that same vein of training and getting ready for the next steps, Bobby, as SIA president-elect, you have the benefit of having this year in training to get ready to move into the president's position. Can you take us behind the scenes a little bit to let us know what you're doing to prepare yourself to step into the role, and what's being done to help make that process as seamless a transition as possible?
Well, I attend a zillion meetings. I mean, literally all the time. I've been attending, well, Michelle, who's our executive director, and Stephanie have a president's check-in meeting, usually about once a week, or maybe it's every other week. So they've invited me to attend that. And the other thing is there's all these committees that the SIA board is on, and we work with headquarters staff. I've been trying to attend all those. We do planning for our board meetings. And then the other thing I do besides go to meetings is I read a lot. And there is an amazing amount of information that is available. We have a program called On Board that has all the board meeting minutes, all the board papers for all the way back to, I don't know, it's whenever they started having computers. So it's amazing. One of the things that I've discovered is that we have a board that is serving for 2 years, but the board made decisions 5 years ago or 8 years ago or 3 years ago, and we may have a different opinion about that now, but we need to go back and make sure what was their intent of doing that. Because sometimes I'll go, I don't understand why we made that decision. So I've been going back, and it's totally amazing the resources that are available. So that's what I do. I go to meetings and I read a lot. And I talk to Stephanie often. She's been wonderful. And, here we are, friends again. I met her. I think I met you at your conference, Northwestern Conference, when I was governor. We went and visited. So it's nice to be able to have that level of friendship. And yeah, we know about each other's dogs now and all kinds of stuff. Oh, I have to tell you, when I met Sharon, do you remember? We were in Chicago and I discovered you in the bar. And I thought you were so interesting because you were talking about your business, but that's where I first met you. It was leadership training in Chicago years ago.
I remember that, and I'd gone to the bathroom after I thought the program was over, and because you're the incoming president, they're going to play a gag on you, and they had the Chicago Mafia, Bobby Police or whatever, they were coming looking for me, and I was in the bathroom. I stepped it back into the room, and there she is, and they arrested me.
Stephanie, do you have your hand up to add something?
Well, I do, because, and I should have shared this, but with one of the things that Bobby said, and I think it's critical at the club level and everything that we do, is it's the partnership between, you're seeing this partnership between Sharon, myself, Bobby, because I've reached out to Sharon. I've had phone calls with Sharon. I've had lunch with Sharon. Sharon, what do I do? But that's part of the criticalness of being a successful leader, is that you're willing to maintain a partnership and you're willing to know where your place is in that partnership. And I think it's important. Past President Kazuko did that for me. She included me and involved me in everything. Not that I was a decision maker, but it creates that awareness. So I would push that out to everybody that's here on the call, that if you're a committee chair, if you're a club officer, whatever your role is within your club, your district, or your region, is you need to create that partnership, because that's part of building the leadership bench. is it shouldn't be now, Bobby, you're president-elect, Godspeed. And there you go. But it's about bringing everybody along. And I have told Bobby if I'm too much, just to let me know. So, and she hasn't yet. So I think we're okay. I did just want to add that about the partnership.
And it makes it much more highly probable that those wonderful things that have been put into place will continue. If you don't have that support, then
Mhm.
anything can happen.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
yes, thank you. I have that we were to go to our Q&A at this point in time in the call. So I'm not sure if there's been anything put into chat on that, or if we're just gonna let you open your mics and ask Suzanne or Darlene, is there anything as a question that's been raised?
I haven't seen anything, but then I haven't been religiously looking. I will check now.
Sue, I will say I did catch a glimpse of one about some information about the leadership program that I
Okay.
was referring to, and Executive Director Michelle did put the link in the chat for anybody to check on that.
I did just see a
Can I
question.
just hop on, Sue, and say one thing? And that was that I didn't say was the 100th anniversary was something that I thought went really well during my term. And that was thanks to many people, including Sue, and including many people on this call, where I opened my Rolodex and sent it to Sue. I mean, I'm a great idea person, but there's too many ideas for hours in the day. So these people said, if you ever need anything, just call. So I said to Sue, call them all. Let's get them all on a call and see what we can do. And I think it's a formula for recruiting for convention, because everybody then felt part of it and they all wanted to make a contribution. And like Nora wanted the committee to go after the 100th anniversary because she was enjoying the camaraderie on the committee. So, and it was a good experience. So thank you to everybody that helped on that.
Well,
And I
before
think
we
it is a result. Go ahead.
before we go to any questions from the chat or people raising their hand, I just want to bring one more person into the conversation who Sharon just mentioned, and that is our relatively new CEO and Executive Director, Michelle Burnett. And Michelle, would you just please, say a few words in response to any of the questions that that Sue asked, or how are we all doing in welcoming you? And how's it going, Michelle?
It's Saturday morning, and so it's going well. I'm here. Everyone's here. We're all still smiling and happy and chipper on a Saturday morning. So I think it's going exceptionally well. I can say that I'm enjoying the term newish, relatively new. I'm enjoying the opportunity to kind of get to know everyone and spend time with everyone. It has been amazing. The outpouring of support, specifically from those here on the panel, has been a tremendous help. And I can say honestly that there's no way I would have been able to survive, and I'm using that term very purposefully, survive, without the support. Past President Sharon has been on my speed dial, whether she realizes or not. I reached out to her again purposefully and said, hey, you don't know me, but I want to get to know you. I want to kind of latch on to you and suck some knowledge from you. And she has been extremely gracious with being very forthcoming and sharing and candid, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, which has been extremely helpful. President Stephanie has been, my left, right hand, middle hand, side hand, hat on the top, coat on me, everything you can think of. President-elect Bobby, same. We've been inseparable. I also see, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention past President Kazuko on this call, who has also been a very, very important part of my growth in this organization. When I started, her and I actually have a story where we started together at the same time, where she was Secretary Treasurer and I was a brand new CFO, and we kind of learn together, which I think is very important. And when we talk about leadership, I think one of the things that I thought I heard, but I want to make sure that we stress this importance, is we have to be vulnerable. We have to be able to say, I do not have all the answers, and I hope you don't expect me to have all the answers, because let me let you know now that I don't. But what I am more than willing to do is work to find the answer, to be collaborative, to search for solutions together. And I think that is what this organization and its members have allowed me to do. And I am extremely grateful and appreciative for that. I know I was supposed to kind of come in with my story. Governor Suzanne, you were going to say something.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You go on. I'm eager to ask a question after. I love what you're saying.
And so, I'm listening to the similarities. I see all these hands. I'm nervous. I think I'm about to have technical difficulties. I hear a lot of similarities to these stories, like Sharon's story specifically when she said, being on the call, SI or another country call in the middle of what would have been her night and falling asleep. I had that same similar story on the SI call where it was probably my 2 or 3 a.m. And I was like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed when I got on the call. But, by the time I woke up, I was the only one left on the call. So again, as our stories are similar, they are also different. And I think that's great as well. My story is kind of twofold. It's one is kind of similar to, and I thought about this analogy last night, and President Stephanie will tell you I'm so good with analogies, of like the old cowboy movies where the father would ask the son if he knew how to swim. And the son would say, no, I don't know how to swim. And the father would pick him up and throw him in the lake and say, well, you do now, right? The old sink or swim method of learning a new job or role or environment. And when I came in 2019, I had to very, very quickly gain a high level of practical understanding of the organization from an operational perspective. This afforded me the opportunity to kind of understand the mechanics of the organization, like the mission, the vision, the programs, the governance, all this, the hard stuff, I like to call it, the technical things. However, it was like kind of watching a Broadway play from behind the scenes or behind the curtain. And I say Broadway play, it probably felt more like a high school musical or like a middle school play than actually a Broadway play. But it kind of gave me that foundational understanding of the organization, again, the operational understanding of the organization. But, as I keep hearing in my newish role as ED CEO, I get to kind of experience the organization or the wonders of this organization from a front row seat, which is really, really different. I can now truly, really appreciate the commitment of folks like you guys on this call on a Saturday morning, evening, or afternoon, and the life-changing programs and projects that we have. I can also appreciate the very important link between the board, the members, HQ staff, the regions, the clubs, and how we all come together seamlessly, or probably not so seamlessly at times, to make a difference and to kind of make dreams come true. So for me, I would say, honestly, just, I show up every day with that excitement of like, I'm going to go see a new play or something new or something different, because it's always something new and it's always something different. But, again, I thank you all. I can't say it enough, right? I really, really thank you all, the folks on this panel specifically, for all of your help and support and your initial just, hey, we can do this together, even in times where I'm like, nope, I don't think we can. You're like, no, we can do this, and allowing me to be we can do this when you feel like you can't. So I think that's important as well. I see a lot of hands. I feel like I've been kind of rambling for a minute.
Stephanie wanted to say something specifically for you.
Well, yeah, and we had on the list that I was to do an introduction, and I was waiting for the cue to say, and here's Michelle. But what I want to be able to share with the group about Michelle is that for those of you that may not know, Michelle was our chief operating and financial officer before she came into the role. She served as our interim ED and CEO, and then we hired her permanently for that role. And she is a very humble individual. I appreciate her encouragement for all of us to be vulnerable. That is something she has taught me. People who have known me a long time, Sue Riney, know that it's very difficult for me to say, I'm overwhelmed, need some help, can we do this? Michelle will be in your face to say, and I mean that with love and affection, but we need those people in our lives as well as leaders. We need the people who will sit beside us without judgment and allow us to be who we are as leaders, but also help bring out the best of who we are as leaders. And I have been thrilled every single day with the decision that we made to hire Michelle as our CEO. Now, she doesn't write an evaluation on me, so I can say whatever I want on this. But I want to share that with our membership, because I realize that our membership doesn't get to interact with our staff at the same level that those of us that are here on the panel do. And I want you to know that they are the best stewards of our mission, of our people resources, of our financial resources. And we could not do what we get to do, what we have the privilege to do every day, if we did not have the support of the great group. And Michelle has been instrumental in helping to create some change and some shifts that may not be seen at the local club level, but that are definitely seen in our ability to be more responsive to our membership requests. And this is what's going to help us continue to move forward as we continue to grow as an organization. So Governor Suzanne, thank you for including Michelle on this call. I just wanted people to have an understanding of we have the best that is out there. So thank you, Michelle, for all that you do.
Great job, Stephanie, and the check's in the mail.
Thank you. You're welcome. You were supposed to put that in chat.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And that's the relationship that we have. You have to have fun. Leadership is hard. We all know that. I mean, it's a blessing, and there's great things that come with it, but there's the hard times too. But you have to have fun. You have to be able to have fun, and we definitely have fun. So thank you.
Suzanne, you had a question as well.
You absolutely have to have fun. I have a bit of an organizational question, and because if I asked it of all of you, we'd be here until supper time. So let me just ask Bobby and Michelle, going into the future, because you're the future of our leadership. What do you two see as the challenges that are facing SIA as a federation, and where do you think we'll find some of the wherewithal to address those challenges?
Bobby, would you like to go first?
Wow, well, that's a big question.
I can take
yeah,
it.
go ahead. I'm tongue-tied here.
I wasn't expecting it either, Bobby, but it's something that I think about very often. I think about actually all the time. You hear that term, what keeps you up at night? And that's one of the things that, keep me up at night is, we have to think about the present and live for the present and survive now, but we also want to make sure that we are a sustainable organization into the future. You know, I can't imagine that I'm going to say anything now that's going to be earth shattering that people are going to walk away with and say, oh, I had no idea that were some of the challenges. You know, obviously our declining membership is
Yeah.
not something that is very specific to SIA. It's specific to all service club organizations right now. It's the declining membership. It's engagement. It's finding ways to engage the members that we have. It's our aging population of members. I mean, you know, that's the elephant in the room, but it is what it is. And then it's also making sure that we, as you'll hear me say, and I'm putting my soapbox under my feet now, you'll hear me say, it's staying true and focused on our mission, and not kind of being diverted in so many very important, but so many different directions, I think is going to be the key for our sustainability into the future.
Yeah, I think I can, now that I've had a minute to think about it, I think that one of the biggest challenges is to keep a focus on the mission in our clubs and to keep them relevant. The aging members, you know, a lot of them don't want to change, and we have to change in order to stay relevant. And we don't want to be that dinosaur that just disappears. And in order to, I think it's important for us to kind of be all in the same direction for our brand, so people know who we are. And we have to get out there into our communities, into our business communities, and get support from them, because we've relied so much on our own members, for example, for fundraising. We need to reach out. I mean, I think my club learned that a few years ago, that we can't just have a fundraiser, we donate all the stuff and then we buy it all back. I mean, that's silly. We need to get out into our communities, let our community know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the money comes. So I think we need to, that's a shift we need to make in SIA too. So that's a challenge I see.
Thank you
Sharon,
so
you have an
much.
add on that?
I do, and that is, we need to, in all cases, every case, even when we're not trying that hard, we need to try harder, is to be kind to one another, be inclusive, and be friendly. I know many times, someone said it, they walk into a conference and you're trying to reserve a table for your whole club. I always go for friendships. And you'll find that most of the people join for one of those three reasons. And so we need to make sure our offering equals that. And I think it's so important. And it's, everybody's going to join a club first. So if they have a bad experience, that's it.
Yeah.
Stephanie, you were inspired by that question also.
Well, yeah, and I had put a comment in chat about grace and kindness, you know, prior, and echoing what Sharon said. And I think it boils down to this for me. Many of us, myself included, when you've been involved with the same group of people or a core group of people for a number of years, it becomes family. And we all know that we don't get to pick our family, our true family, our family, you know, our family by blood, they're your family. And I always say we put the fun in dysfunctional, but you can do things and say things with your family and they're still your family. But what we have to remember as Soroptimist members is that my Soroptimist family chooses whether or not I get to be a part of that family. And if I want to act in a way that wants them to choose to push me out of the family, you know, or because I'm not acting with grace and kindness, that's what we have to remember. We can't always adopt the feeling of, oh, they'll understand, that's just who I am. Well, they don't have to accept you in that regard if you're not treating others with grace and kindness. So it's that umbrella of civility. And that is what keeps me up at night as it relates to our membership. It's the phone calls that I receive from clubs all over the place, is, you know, and we continue to work on that and try to help clubs and stuff. But my takeaway would be, treat each other with grace and kindness and look at it as a loving partnership. And we can all agree to disagree at times. We're not going to always be in agreement, on everything, but we can do it in an agreeable way. So that was all I wanted to add.
Well, lovely thoughts all. I know we've reached the top of our hour, and Governor Suzanne, I guess we turn it back to you for whatever you'd like to do at this point.
So with that, I want to be mindful of time. Everybody's got their weekend to go to. Just a huge thank you to Sue for moderating, and Sharon, Stephanie, Bobby, Michelle for sharing those pearls. Kazuko for being here, everyone for being here. And share the wealth, share the joy, share the kindness, and have a great weekend. Thank you so much for all you do, everyone.
See you in Dublin.